my pigeon. I got a little story to tell you all today, so please listen very closely because I shall tell this only once. 3 years ago, I came across a lost episode of Spongebob SquarePants, which was so disturbing that it led into the firing of my coworker and me replacing him as a head chief. I guess I should explain some things. I work as a lunch lady at Hartleydale High School, and I have worked there since the 1960s. Yes, I'm incredibly old and smelly, but cut me some slack, will ya? So I could really do some with slack on toast now. Anyways, now that working as a lunch lady was hard work, you think being a teacher is so hard? Boy, you ain't seen nothing yet. I have had countless stories over the years involving my experiences as working as a lunch lady. You got belittled constantly by the rest of the staff. Also, none of the students had treated you with any respect. I also don't have any toes due to the fact that I have been smoking addicted at the age of 3. You might expect having no toes isn't exactly one for me on popularity contests. Hartleydale High School was rotten to the core, with mounts of bullies and corrupted sons of migra who had a habit that's on the walls. Even the teachers are corrupted and even take bribes from local street gangs. Head teacher Greg Bakerman tries his best to improve any problems that the school has, but is clearly unable to combat every single one of them. Now that it's just asking them too much. Greg, that is my little pigeon. Now, because of the bully problem at Hartleydale, I am frequently mugged by the student's body. One day I was just finishing up cooking up some beans and toast when all of a sudden these 3 annoying students came into the kitchen and asked, "Hey, where's our beans? Where's our beans?" They were so annoying, they even proceeded to be giving me a beating to the pulp by the enforcer. While I was getting beaten up, the annoying students helped themselves to the good food fridge. Yes, you there. To keep up with the current sociological mandates, we have to have a store that is really good food in one fridge and bad in the other. I also didn't get it very well with the rest of the staff, but most especially Francis Bakewell. Francis Bakewell is the head chief at the Hartleydale High School, has some serious anger problems. He hates my guts and it's constantly trying to get me fired by Greg Blakeman. Bakewell doesn't even take it by the fact that I sometimes take leftover food home with me. He has been trying his absolute best to catch me in the act, however, he never succeeds in doing so. I was so annoyed because despite this being the school since the 60s, I still eat collapse on your power by Bakewell. Oh, that salmon sandwich, I certainly hope someone gets him an indigestion. Francis Bakewell is also so corrupt, and in the pocket of several gangs operating the area. Sadly, Greg Bakeman refuses to listen to my plight, as he is more worried about impending on from the visit inspectors. I was certainly hoped that it wasn't an Inspector Gadget. Oh, I'm hilarious, am I, my little pigeon? Don't even try and deny it, because I can see you trying to hold back a laugh. Heck, your face is beginning to turn yellow like some sort of Simpson. Now, another one of my enemies at the school was none other than the cleaner. The cleaner has no name, or at least I never heard of it being called by it. The cleaner was an extremely creepy man who has a real thing or things that weren't clean enough to his liking. One time I was trying to do a crossword puzzle when the cleaner appeared behind me asking, "Dirty, who the heck are you?" I cried in despair, as the cleaner responded with, "I'm telling you who I am the cleaner." I tried my best to go back to doing my usual crossword, only for the cleaner to be right up on my face and said, "Oh dear, what are you gonna do? What am I gonna do with you now?" Moving on to Bakewell and the cleaner, allow me to explain some boring things about my current situation. Even though I'm sure most of you probably don't care any of that, do you, my little pigeon? I live in a super mansion with a couple chicks down the road from high school, and I own 25 cats as pets, and I even have loads of fur in my clothes when I go to work. My cats make my life quite miserable. I quite don't have the heart to get I just don't have the heart to get rid of them, because they all have a lot of friends in politics. Oh, how very quaint. Now, as I said, I start this taste. If you were paying attention, I certainly came into a view of a lost episode of all-hit animated children's show named Spongebob SquarePants. even handling after the episode to the police. I must admit, I'm still 100% baffled of how this episode came to be. Now, this story isn't just about a lost episode of SpongeBob. No, it's about how Francis Bakewell got fired. Now, I replaced him as head chef Buckle Up Duckies because this story is about to get heated by another radiator. It all started on a chilly afternoon in 2017. I don't remember the exact same date. I mean, how could I? That was just asking for too much, and that is my silly little pigeon. Anyways, I just got done serving the tables, and lunchtime was about 5 minutes away from the ending. So, I made my way into the kitchen to see if Bakewell was around, and thankfully, he wasn't. So I began stuffing some sesame seed buns into my handbag. I was the only one to be hosted a huge barbecue party when I got home. However, while loading the buns into my handbag, I noticed that Francis Bakewell left his laptop in the kitchen. The laptop was playing a horrid instrumental of SpongeBob theme song. It also sounded so bad I nearly vomited, not because of the music, but because I'd gotten food poisoning from a really bad ham shalab I had gotten from the store I came across the road. I put my handbag down on the floor and waddled over towards the laptop which sat by the microwave. I lifted up the screen to get a better look, and as I expected, it was the opening of the main menu for some random SpongeBob SquarePants DVD. That's when the bell went, and the entire cafeteria emptied out as the students and teachers hurried over to their next lesson. Meanwhile, I grabbed myself a chair from the far side of the kitchen and brought it over to the kitchen side so I could watch SpongeBob. I may be an old crone, but I do know I love some Spongy. I mean, who doesn't, really? The main menu was, aside from the horrible instrumental, was nothing plain reality. It was just generic picture of Mr. Krabs being yelled at by some angry residents of Bikini Bottom. There are two options: read, play episode, and the other read, care and feeding of the Grinch. I decided to, upon most click on it. Oh man, I shouldn't have done that. There was a brief clip that came on the stream. Show Max the dog telling the story about the Grinch. The care and feeding of a Grinch, Max said, as he began telling the story. So I was even forced to sit through Max's retelling of how the Grinch stole Christmas. He got something high or something. I don't even know if I can explain what happened, to be the perfect honest with you. And with that, the clip ended and the main menu came on the screen. After all that nonsense, I finally decided I would press play episode. The better, I believe, and click on play, the episode started with the theme song, which was normal. And that was when the title card came on the screen, and it read, Krusty Killers. That doesn't sound like any SpongeBob episode I've ever seen. Then yet again, for most people, I stopped watching the show after the movie came out, so it was probably a newer episode. The music that played in the background was The Grill Is Not a Home. It was only in slow motion, and it sounded nasty. The episode then started at the Krusty Krab. Mr. Krabs was sitting in his office sniffing some money while he heard a noise coming from outside the office. Mr. Krabs left the office and he saw two police officers enter the restaurant. Can I help you two officers? Mr. Krabs asked nervously. Only Mr. Krabs didn't sound anything like Mr. Krabs. No, his voice didn't sound like it. It had been dubbed by a Welsh farmer who has a chimp sidekick named Sebastian Cole. Sorry for that mischief, Lanechit. The officers proceeded to ask Mr. Krabs if they could have a word with him in his office. Mr. Krabs, after a moment in hesitation, allowed the officers to follow him into the office. In the office, Mr. Krabs sat down on his desk while the two officers sat on the chairs across from him. One of the soldiers pulled out a small blank black notepad and said, Now, you know the corner here, Eugene? Gene, the newcomer? Nope, I can't say I do, Mr. Krabs said, as he began sweating violently. Oh, yes, you do, the officers proclaimed and began writing on his notepad. Oh, screwed ass, Mr. Krabs yelled at the top of his lungs, and then proceeded to pull out a large flamethrower. He then set the fire to the two officers, killing them both instantly. After deposing the two officers, Mr. Krabs then proceeded to pull out of his eye sockets and began using them as a skipping rope. He skipped his way out of the office, out of the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob ran after Mr. Krabs and asked, What's going on, Mr. Krabs? Ahoy me there, bucko, Mr. Krabs proclaimed happily as he skipped all the way back towards his house. SpongeBob headed back inside the restaurant, and upon looking up at the blunt dead officers, made the urgent call to Bikini Bottom Police Department. Arriving at his house, Mr. Krabs realized that he didn't have the key to get in, so then he heard loud siren noises and turned around to see a huge group of police officers waiting to apprehend him. They were led by Commissioner Al Priss. "Throw him in the car," Al Priss said, as the officers threw Mr. Krabs into the top of the cop cars. Al Priss then turned to face the officers and said, "We're taking him downtown, and tomorrow morning he'll stand trial." Mr. Krabs tried his best to break out of the car window, but it was no use. Mr. Krabs then even was taken to the Bikini Bottom police station, and he was caught for a rough night. The screen then cut to an episode of the view of the Bikini Bottom courthouse. Mr. Krabs was standing trial with Spongebob, serving as his lawyer. Judge Claude Frollo then slammed his gavel down on the court and came into session. "Mr. Eugene Krabs," Frollo said before continuing with, "you have been found guilty of using crab meat in your world-famous Krabby Patties. You have decided not to appeal." Mr. Krabs sighed heavily and then said, "No, Your Honor, because your rumors are not rumors. They be true?" "What?" The entire court, including SpongeBob, cried in illusion. "Allow me to explain," Mr. Krabs said, as he made his way over to the witness stand. Arriving at the witness stand, Mr. Krabs began to tell his story. A time title card which read 60 years later. Mr. Krabs was shown being set in his bed chamber. He was feeling very depressed and just having to come home from the war. Then he decided to take his beloved pet worm Mr. Doodles for a walk. While walking, Mr. Krabs talked to Mr. Doodle about how he desired about opening his own restaurant. Just as he was about to turn home, Mr. Krabs saw that the local retirement home, the Krusty Rusty Krab, had put up a for sale sign. According to the local that Mr. Krabs asked, the retirement home was closed due to bankruptcy, and the owners were looking to sell it to anyone who could afford it. Mr. Krabs was able to be negotiable and a sweet deal on retirement home by giving the owners a small loan of million cod livers. And with the owners put it off, Mr. Krabs convinced the home into a restaurant and gave it its new name, the Krusty Krab. Sadly, problems began to arise when Mr. Krabs was out of ingredients that he needs to make the acclaimed Krabby Patties. Unable to make the Krabby Patties, Mr. Krabs was about to close up shop until he thankfully found a solution offered up by a local mob of boss Danny Mitito. Mitito was a fellow crab who controlled Bikini Bottom's drug trade. Danny DeMito even held up a meeting with Mr. Krabs at his office one day. DeMito asked, "You know something, Mr. Krabs? Why don't you put a little bit of crab in your Krabby Patties?" "I love money," Mr. Krabs cried happily as he once again using his eyes as a skipping rope. "Follow me, you little son of a wood," DeMito said, as he and Mr. Krabs made their way out of the Krusty Krab and towards the local crab farm ran none other than the Farmer Francis. Old Farmer Francis, the sweet poor dishwasher tablet. Suddenly the episode began to cut of a show of a brief clip which had reality bizarre looking toys singing to the screen. "Shame on you, you young Pinocchio. Not allowed to mock your daddo," they sang as the screen then froze and cut to another clip. This clip had some bishops hanging out in the nightclub. "Oh, Fido, please," one of the bishops cried as one of the bishops began to play the drums. At the moment, I could hear that the bell of final lesson was going on, and I decided to ignore it. I must admit, however, I was kind of baffled wherein Francis Bakewell would usually stay at the school for the entire day. So I must ask, where is Francis Bakewell? Anyways, the episode then came back to normal and showed Mr. Krabs and DeMito arriving at the Farmer Francis farm. "We'd like to buy a crab," DeMito said as he handed a huge bag of fake dollar bills over to Farmer Francis. "I'll give you 20, Farmer Francis proclaimed as he began farting violently. "Well, I think I'm going to be sick," Mr. Krabs cried as his face turned green. DeMito handed it aside of the farmhouse and then come back in, carrying a cat carrier which contained 20 crabs. Mr. Krabs and DeMito thanked Francis for the help, and then proceeded to make their way back to the Krusty Krab. At the Krusty Krab, Danny DeMito headed inside the kitchen with the cat carrier. He poured the hot pot of boiling hot water and then proceeded to throw the crabs into it. "What the heck are you doing?" Mr. Krabs cried at the top of his lungs. "This is our true secret, Mr. K," DeMito said before continuing with, "the key to our success." "Ours? Who said it was going to be ours?" Mr. Krabs asked heroically before proceeding to kick Mr. DeMito into the pot. "Oh, that's my pretty darn warm," DeMito cried as Mr. Krabs put a huge lid on top of the pot in order to drown out DeMito as he screamed in pain. and of course screamed some more, and Krabs got him some custard creams and some PG tips. The screen then cut to the show where Mr. Krabs was removing the lid from the pot, revealing a small taste test. "Hey, this is pretty darn amazing!" Mr. Krabs proclaimed happily as he placed the crab meat into the patty buns, and then he proceeded to sell the Krabby Patties to the customers, and told them that they were a part of a new and improved Krabby Patty formula. And the new improved Krabby Patties were quickly international critical acclaim, and Mr. Krabs became one of the most richest and powerful presidents of Bikini Bottom. Mr. Krabs was establishing a good friendship with Farmer Francis, who became Krabs' partner in the trade. Twice a week, and sometimes more depending on the direction of the sun, Francis would send a boat up for Krabs into the Krusty Krabs. In return, Mr. Krabs would send up a boat containing bags and bags upon of fake dollar bills. Francis was saving a lot of fake money in order to buy a house that was made entirely out of solid gold. Isn't that so swell? It's sweller than the swell Miller, and we all know who that is, don't we, dear? However, problems soon began to arise when Mr. Krabs became too greedy for his own good. He began taking business trips out of Bikini Bottom and kidnapping crabs from other towns and cities, including Shell City. Oh, Shell City, the city of smell of shells, and honey nut Cheerios. One time, Mr. Krabs and Spongebob attended the cheapest crab convention, with Krabs winning the highest contest after stealing the entire hotel. The other crabs looked in amazement and said, "That is the cheapest display we've ever seen." After leaving the hotel, Mr. Krabs and Spongebob go home first, and then they had a party to attend. And with the party being the cheapest crab event in attendance, at the party, Krabs had his fellow crabs killed and made them into Krabby Patties, which went on to event and did not tell the Krusty Krab. In order to stop SpongeBob and Squidward from finding out the truth, Mr. Krabs had created a fake secret Krabby Patty formula, which he gave to the pair. The pair were successfully fooled into thinking it was real formula. Mr. Krabs was able to keep up this cannibal formula for about 60 years, until Plankton finally caught with it. You see, with another yet failed attempt on getting the Krabby Patty formula, Plankton headed up to the window, which looked in Mr. Krabs' office, and inside the office, Mr. Krabs was down butchering the fellow few crabs to death with some knives. "Well, that's a pretty funny way if I do say so myself," I yelled at the very top of my lungs. I shoved massive slices of cheesy and rather smelly pasta in my mouth. Anyways, Plankton then proceeded to ring up the police, which explains the disappearance of the Krusty Krab at the start of the episode. The episode then came back to the courtroom, and it showed Mr. Krabs just finishing telling the story. "Mr. Krabs," Judge Cord Frollo began to conduct with, "because of your crimes against the people of this town and several other good towns, I'm having you put in an electric chair." However, just as Judge Frollo was about to slam his gavel down, he was then shot by Mr. Krabs, who proclaimed, "Not today!" Mr. Krabs then proceeded to kill the entire courthouse by using a machine gun that he gotten from Pearl many Christmas mornings ago. Mr. Krabs then proceeded to make his way out onto the street, where he continued the massacre entirely of Bikini Bottom. He would have continued it if it hadn't been the nuke dropped down, killing Mr. Krabs and everyone, including SpongeBob. General Asquith came on screen and said, "What? Did you expect maybe an Easter bunny?" And with that said, the episode ended with the credits, and the credits had Crash Bandicoot dancing to a disco stew from The Simpsons, while really weird in 1970s music playing in the background. It sounded like the song had been made from the Bee Gees or something. Before I could register a reaction to the episode, I was rudely pulled out of a chair by Francis Bakewell, who screamed, "What do you think you're doing? Do your damn job, you old clone." "I don't think so, Francie," I said to him, and I continued with, "Mr. Blakewood, man, you need to see this. Oh, go ahead and tell me that I believe you." Francis barked sickly with his voice as he poured himself a cup of tea, venting from the vending machine. "Oh," I muttered under my breath as I gave Bakewell a middle finger. Before I could say anything, I had already made my way out of the kitchen and towards Greg Blakeman's office. Arriving at the office, I knocked at the door 69 times before Blakeman finally showed up to answer. "Oh, hello, what do you want? Can't you see I'm busy?" Blakeman asked as he was trying his best to heat out the game of Scrabble with his pet goat. The pet goat is Greg's only friend in the world. Incredibly PG tips, if I may ask for myself. I proceeded to explain the events of the lost episode, who would not believe a word of it. A lost episode, you say? Well, that's a pug's wash. Get back to work before I send you to Tabuki. The Blake man laughed mightily as the sailors chuckled and then asked, so why don't you tell me and come and see for yourself? So Blakeman followed me back up to the kitchen where we saw Francis Blakewell packing up his suitcase. Oh, where are you off to, Francis? Oh, a little summer haul, are we? Blakeman says. It's only March, you fat tub of lard, Francis bluntly said as he continued with, so you want to see this lost episode then? Blakewell then pulled out his laptop from one of the suitcases and placed on the counter, then proceeded to click play on the episode, and Blakeman just stood there in utter shock and disgust. I was once again subjugated to what the horribly episode I mentioned was so horrible. After viewing the episode, Greg Blakeman announced that Francis Blakewell would be fired immediately, and now he would be replaced as head chef. Fire me? My boss will stick around a firecracker up there. Blakewell responded with a little spat right in Blakeman's eyes before making his leave through the fire exit, never to be seen again. Last I heard, Blakewell went out to run into Paris, where he found a job running guns for a local resistance shop. This was a little group that we were defeated and disgraced. Blakewell got himself a job at Gusto's. From what I did hear, Blakewell's old co-workers were local, and he doesn't talk to anyone and has developed a love for romantic comedies. I have always knew that there was something fishy about Blakewell. One day I'll write a book about him, and I'll call it There's Something About Blakewell. With Blakewell gone, I replaced him as head chef, so then that way I wouldn't get any respect from any of the students still didn't, and my fellow staff. I'm still treated like a scumbag, and everyone in the damn school. Also, Blakeman has recently mysteriously vanished and was replaced by a deputy head teacher, Mr. Crabblesnitch. Crabblesnitch was a proper person, if you don't mind me saying. Well, I don't care if you do or don't, honestly. Anyways, Crabblesnitch knows nothing about running the school, whereas Greg Blakeman was the true leader. Though he was an a-hole, he still had a heart for pickled onions. Believe me, I asked his doctor. Now, in regards to the feelings of that Spongebob episode, I don't really know what to make of it, quite honestly. It was good, but kind of smelly and rancid at the same time. It felt more of a joke to have been made by animators on a Christmas party or something. Also, in regards to where this episode came from and where it is now, I don't know. I don't ask. Last I heard, Blakerman gave the episode over to the police, and the episode is currently on the hands of the former assistant commissioner Reb Mannels. Now, at least that's where I know where it's safe in the hands. Don't I, my little pigeon? Wink. No, to my duckies. I better be going. It's time for me to bingo at the local bingo hall at Walnut Pass. I hope to see you around. And oh, there's goes for the doorbell. I think the old lady Wendigo is still waiting for my arrival. So just remember, please always eat with your mouth closed, and it's just good manners. Also, be nice to your dinner ladies, because they might just leave the right ingredients to ruin your life. I ruined Bakewell's life, and I may ruin yours by giving you an incredibly smelly milkshake before you head out to the biggest exam in your life, the exam which will decide for the future, the exam for true heroes to strive for. Yes, that's what I can do. Bye, my little pigeon, and I hope I see you around. And that, my little pretties, was Krusty Killers, a SpongeBob Lost episode funny pasta written by Matthew Bumford. My final thoughts on this story? I have to say, Matthew Bumford, this story was absolutely amazing. It was funny. It was really well done. And I have to say, you did a pretty good job with this story. I'm definitely going to be honest, Matthew Bumford. This story was really silly at the same time. It was just honestly really funny. Now, the first thing I could definitely say what I liked about this story was the fact that, it's involving, Krusty Krabs, well, the restaurant from SpongeBob, and it involves, Mr. Krabs, putting something in the Krabby Patties and making people believe what it is. Now, the fact that Krabs is in Krabby Patties. That is a very disturbing theory, I'm gonna say right now. Like, I could see this being the case with SpongeBob, you know? I know this was, like, proven in, like, the, oh yeah, there was, like, a Robot Chicken episode where they actually, you know, say Krabby Patties are made out of crabs. Now, that was in the Robot Chicken episode, and for those who don't know, that's just, like, the little short I found out. But I'm gonna say right now that I really like this story. This story was actually pretty good and really well made. And I could definitely say that the story was absolutely amazing and well done. Like, I could definitely see this being the case when it comes to that. I could definitely see this being, you know, no, the case with a SpongeBob episode. I could see this being a real SpongeBob episode. But at the same time, I could feel that if, you know, Nickelodeon was able to release this episode, they would get a lot of backlash for that, which is very, very, very disturbing. But I could definitely say this is a SpongeBob episode, so I could definitely see this being an actual episode of SpongeBob. Man, I have to go watch SpongeBob again. I haven't seen that in years. Well, I'm gonna have to, you know, go back and watch it, because I haven't seen that show in a long time. But I definitely have to say, Matthew Bumford, you did a really good job with this story, and I could definitely say the story was absolutely amazing. It was very well done, I can definitely say right now, and it was really funny. Now, I have to say the grammar was actually really good, the sentence structuring was good, the storyline, everything about it was flat out amazing. I did have to take a few takes because there was some times where I stifled a few laughs or just burst out laughing. It was really well done, Matthew Bumford. Really well done. I really hope you make more SpongeBob episodes like this, because I would really like to see more SpongeBob episodes, because for those who don't know, Mr. Krabs is obsessed with money. And I have to say, I can honestly, you know, see, you know, Mr. Krabs doing all the things that he did here. Although they probably would not do it in a real episode, but, you know, this is completely not completely out of the ordinary, because I know SpongeBob has done a lot of weird stuff in the past, and this could be honestly something that I can imagine, you know, SpongeBob, in the episode have SpongeBob doing that. So I could definitely see this being the case with, Mr. Krabs. I could definitely say, you know, see Mr. Krabs, you know, doing this kind of stuff. This is the kind of thing that I could really see Mr. Krabs go. I could see this being a real SpongeBob episode in more ways that I can really count. So, I could definitely say this episode was actually really good, Matthew Bumford. You did an awesome job. And I really hope you do make more stories, because I really would like to see more stories by you. So, but I have to say, you did an awesome job, Matthew Bumford, and I really enjoyed your stories. That is a very good positive that I could definitely say. It was that I love your stories. They're flat out amazing stories, and I definitely have to say, I could see this being the case when it comes to, SpongeBob, and I could see this being a real episode of SpongeBob. Like, I'm gonna be honest. I could actually see this being a real episode of SpongeBob. I don't know how, but I could just see it being the case. That is a very good positive that I could definitely say, is that I could see this being a SpongeBob episode, like a real SpongeBob episode. I could actually see this because it's actually believable, and that's a really big thing what I have to say. Oh, and I'm gonna say right now that this story was flat out amazing. It's funny too. Now I am gonna have to read more stories by you, Matthew Bumford, because you write really good stories. Like, you write amazing, well done stories. That's a positive. Now, is there anything negatives that I do have to say about the story? Well, honestly, no. I can't say anything negative about the story. I honestly found the story to be flat out amazing and really well done too. So I could definitely say there's definitely a lot of time and effort into the story. So that's a very good positive that I do have to say with the story. So, like I'm going to say, this is simply my own personal opinion, and if you disagree with me, that's fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions in regards to these creepypastas, or funny pastas in this case, and this is simply my own personal thoughts. My final rating of this story would have to be a 10 out of 10. It's great creepypasta, great storyline, great grammar. Everything about it was flat out good. And I can actually see this being a real SpongeBob episode. They probably would not air it, though, because of, well, it's messed up. Like I said, I know funny pastas, creepypastas for that matter, do tend to, do a lot of messed up stuff in when it comes to stories. No, not like those, crappy cliched ones, but, you know what I mean. But anyways, with that being said, what did you all think about this creepypasta? Did you all enjoy it? Did you not? Also, what we have done personally to help make this story a lot better? Leave me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section down below. I'm the Queen of Lions. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. And if you're brand new here to this channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because I make brand new videos every single day. Don't forget to ring the notification bell to when I upload so then you guys won't miss an upload. And as always, please roll the outro because I'm out of here. And I will be seeing you all in the next video. Peace out.